All right, so let's move on. Let's see. For today, we're going to be looking at the volume. It says find the volume of each figure. Round your answer to the nearest tenth. So 10 sounds like a number 10, which is a one with 1 0. So nearest tenth means one decimal place. So what I'm going to do, it says round it if necessary. Let me talk a little bit about volume. What is volume? I see I'm going to be working 4 examples, but let's see what is volume to begin with. Last week we were talking about prisms. Remember, we talked about surface area, right? And the way I showed you guys was like the surface area of a prism. We had two bases, right? We see in my screen right now, we're seeing on my screen a square prism. So we had two bases, in this case, two squares, and the rest are rectangles. I even said, look at the room. Look at a room. You have two bases, which is the ceiling and the floor, and the rest are rectangles, right? The walls, when you look around, they're rectangles. I had a square prism. I'm showing you guys now a triangular prism. Now we learned for surface area, the amount of rectangles, the amount of walls was important because we were going to paint them. So we needed to know how many walls we were going to have. So when my base had 4 sides, remember I had 4 rectangles. When my base had 3 sides, like a triangle, then I had 3 rectangles. And I even included a cylinder. Remember, it came in, I said cylinder. Some people may call it a circular prism, but we tend to call it cylinder. That one fell in the same family because it was two bases and the rest was a rectangle. Now, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at the volume. Now, we're not going to paint the outside. We're going to be looking at the space and the inside. Imagine a swimming pool. Imagine a swimming pool. Now, surface area of a swimming pool is basically the wall. Let's say we need to come in plaster. We need to paint the pool. That's the surface area. Now, the volume is how much water is in it. Okay, so volume is going to be the space on the inside. Now, let's say we start with a rectangular prism. Guys, see I'm sharing a rectangular prism. I have a measurement at the bottom 5, and then by 2, at the bottom, the measurements are 5 and 2, and then this height is going to be 5. Now, the space on the inside, we measure it with cubes. Okay, so we're going to be measuring with cubes. So my question would be, how many cubes are inside this figure? For us to make it a little visual, let me actually come out with cubes. So you guys see at the bottom, I have the 5. You guys count, there's 5 cubes one way. Now these two means there's 2 cubes on the width, and this other 5 here at the right means the height. There's 5 cubes. Now, notice how I am even using colors. I'm using colors so we can easily see how many cubes are there. I see that I separated into 5 layers. You see the purple one, the green one, the pink layered, the blue layered, and the red layer. So I separated into layers. Now, looking at the purple one, see how I'm looking at the purple layered, we can easily count the cubes, right? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'm gonna say there's, from the purple cubes, there's 10 of them. Now for the green cubes, I know I'm not looking at all of them because we have to imagine there's some on the back. So we have to imagine, like, again, there's some on the back, but I'm gonna say I have the same amount of green cubes as I do of purple cubes. Because if I was missing any of my green cubes, the purple cubes will fall down, right? So I cannot have empty spaces, otherwise the purple cubes fall down. So I'm gonna say I also have 10 green cubes. And when I'm looking at the pink cubes, I'm gonna say I have 10 of them as well. When I have these blue cubes, I'm gonna say I have 10 blue cubes. And when I'm looking at the red cubes, I think we all agree that I have 10. So that, notice how I wrote 10s over here for each of my layers. Now, when I add them, if I was to add all my cubes, I could go 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10. Or I remember back in kindergarten, I learned that repeated addition, when I'm adding the same number multiple times, I can just multiply. I can just go 10 times 5. So whether we added the 10 5 times or we just went 10 times 5, I think we can agree there's 50 cubes here. Right, there's 50 cubes. Now, using this idea, somebody would have said, wait a minute, it seems like the layers, it's the area of the base, right? Notice how at the bottom, it will be a 5x2 rectangle. So each layer was basically the base, right? In this case, the base is a rectangle, but the base of a prism could have been a triangle, could have been anything. So I'm gonna say, okay, the 5 times 2 at the bottom was the base, and then this 5 here at the side is the height. So wait a minute, knowing that, I could have said, for the volume of a prism, in my case, I have a rectangular prism, but it could be a triangular prism. It could be the base could be a trapezoid, could be anything. Once again, I'm going to call it base, but it's a shape. In this case, it's a rectangle. It's going to be the area of the base times the height. Okay, let me say that again. It's going to be the area of the base times the height. And the base is a shape. Okay, so the shape is, again, it's a rectangle, triangle, even on cylinders. Let me show you guys this picture right here. The base of a cylinder is a circle. A cylinder, I can break it into many bases. The amount of bases is depending on the height. So if the height is 10, I can do 10 bases. Okay, so having that said, let's take a look at our work now. Looking at question number 11, I mentioned last week, the first thing we do when we're looking at prisms, I'm looking for a shape that is not a rectangle, because I just said I'm going to go for the volume of a prism. I'm going to go the area of the base times the height. And remember, base, when I say base, I'm talking about a shape. And I'm looking for a shape that is not a rectangle. In my case, let me highlight it here. We see a trapezoid. I need to know the measurement of the two sides that are parallel in the trapezoid. I see at the bottom, this side is 4. I'm going to put it right here. This is 4. And I'm going to say this one on the top is 9. You see where I got it from, right here. And I need to know the distance between the two sides that are parallel. Here, I see this side, it is 4.3. So I remember that for the area of a trapezoid, first I add the two sides that are parallel. So in this case, 9 and 4. I'm going to add these two. That's going to give me 13. I added the base, the two sides that were parallel. I know when we're looking at a shape of a trapezoid, I even call those base. Okay, so remember I added those, and then I multiplied it by the half of the height. So I did 4.3 divided by 2. Okay, so I'm going to use a calculator. And I'm going to go 13 in one parentheses. The other parenthesis, I'm going to go 4.3 divided by 2. And I multiplied everything. And this is going to give me 27.95. Now, keep in mind, this is only the area of the base. 27.95 is just the area of the base. So if I round this to the nearest tenth, it will be wrong, because I'm not quite done yet. I have to multiply this by the height of my prism. I remember last week when we were talking about surface area, I said the height, the distance between the two bases, is a number that has nothing to do with your base. In this case, 12. If you imagine the other trapezoid, the distance between the two trapezoids is 12. So the height of my prism is 12. Now, some people might be, isn't the height the distance always going from the bottom and up? And I'm going to say not necessarily. We all have a height, right? If we stand up, we all have a height, But what about when we lay down? Is our height going up? Not necessarily. So the height is not always going up and down. It is up and down if we're standing. But our prisms here can be laying down. All right, so now looking at this, 27.95 times 12, because I'm going to go the area of the base times the height. I'm going to use a calculator, and it gives me 335.4. When it comes to measurement, the area of the base was feet squared. The height was 12 feet. So feet squared times feet is feet to the third. People call it cubic feet. Now, I'm not going to be so picky on the measurement. So as long as you get the number, I feel you know how to do this. So I'm expecting just the number. So 335.4. I rounded to the nearest tenth if necessary. My answer did come out as a one decimal place. So I'm good. All right, let's take a look at question number 12. The area of the base. I'm looking at a circle now because this is a cylinder. So I'm looking at the circle. There's a circle at the bottom. I see there's a circle on the top. So I got to remember what's the area of my circle. Because remember, I'm going to go the area of the base, which in this case, the area of a circle times the height. And I said usually height is a number that has nothing to do with your base. So for the area of a circle, I need the radius. So should go only to half of the circle. I see a 14 here, but the 14 is the diameter because it crosses the whole circle. So I'm going to say the radius is 7 because I only need it up to the half of the circle. Okay, so my radius is 7. I remembered last week we talked about areas of triangle or circles, and I said it was going to be radius squared times pi. The radius is 7, and basically square means radius times radius. So I'm going to go 7 times 7 times pi. That's going to give me the area of the circle, the area of the base. Whatever I get for the area of the base, I'm going to multiply this by 11 because the height of this cylinder is 11. Now, for the pi, for the number pi, my instructions are going to say use a number 3.14 for pi. So I'm going to grab my calculator. I'm going to go 7 times 3.14 times 11. Going to give me my answer to be 1,692.46, which I'm going to round it to one decimal place. So I'm going to say this is 1,692.5. The second decimal place is big enough, so it pushes my 4 to a 5. Okay. Now, let me take a look at number 13. Volume of a prism. It has to be area of the base times the height. I'm looking for a shape that is not a rectangle, because that's the base. If I cannot find one, which is the case here, then I guess the base is also a rectangle. To help you guys out, which to identify the base, I'm going to put the 4 90-degree corners of the base. So now here, this is a 4 by 12 rectangle. And I can even see it on the back. There's another rectangle that is a 4 by 12. So I have to go for the area of the volume of a prism. I have to go area of the base times the height. The base is a rectangle, right? 4 by 11. And I know for rectangles, it's really simple. 4 by 12, 4 by 12, I just have to multiply it 4 times 12. Right? For a rectangle, I just have to multiply those two numbers. 4 by 12, so it gives me 48. That's the area of the base. Now the height, in this case, it's 7. It's the distance between the bases. It's a number that has nothing to do with your base. Now, 48 times 7 gives me 336. Because my measurement is inches, I will say inches to the third, or people call it cubic inches. So I'm just going to leave it as 336. Okay, lastly, let's take a look at number 14. I'm looking for the base. Remember, the base is the one shape that is not a rectangle. So I'm going to go the area of the base times the height. And I find a triangle here. Just for you guys to see, there's another triangle here. Okay, let me just focus on one triangle. I find a 90-degree corner of that triangle. I need the 90-degree corner. Now, this 90-degree corner is made by 3 and 4. And I mentioned before, right? We talk about the area of triangles. We said the area of a triangle, first we start seeing it as a rectangle. So I multiply the 3 times 4. I'm going to multiply 3 times 4, but then I divide this by 2. So I started as a rectangle, 3 times 4, but I'm going to divide it by 2 because a triangle is half of a rectangle. So 3 times 4 divided by 2 is the area of the base. The height, the number that has nothing to do with our triangles, I see that I haven't used the number 5 and the number 1. Now 5, it is the long side of my triangle. So that has something to do with the base, has something to do with the triangle. I'm not going to use it, but that 5 has something to do with my base. So 1 will be the height. So I'm going to go 3 times 4 divided by 2 for the base, which is 6. The height is 1. And when I multiply this, 6 times 1, I get the volume is 6.